Good morning. It's Gary from G&H Honey Bees. And this is not exactly beekeeping video, but it is about honey. And I am going to put together a grape mead. And I'll go through the process of what I've done. So I've got my plastic buckets of honey here, these white buckets, and I have this heating pad. So I put this top bucket down on the table on top of the heating pad and put it on medium. And that warms the honey up enough so that it'll flow a little better. You don't want to put honey in a microwave or boil it on a stove because you'll just kill the goodness that's in a honey. If you get honey above 114 degrees Fahrenheit, then it becomes useless. Or it loses all its good properties. So anyway, I just use, this is all I use is just a standard household heating pad, and I just warm it up enough so that it'll flow. And today I'm going to be using these purple grapes that I found at the store yesterday. There's big seedless grapes. That's what they look like uncut. And I have split them in half. And there's two reasons for that. First reason is, big reason, these grapes have a very tough skin on them. And if you just put them in the bottle like that, the yeast won't be able to get at the inside of the grape, and therefore they'll just float around in there and do nothing. And the second reason is going to make them easier to get in and out of the bottle once the fermentation is done. And I'm going to use 3 pounds, I've measured this out, 3 pounds of honey today. Now in the past, my other brews, which I haven't bottled yet, I've only used 2.5 pounds of honey. Now that makes, with the active dry yeast that I use, that makes, like a relatively dry honey, or dry mead. So I'm going to try 3 pounds of honey and see if it comes out a little sweeter this time. So first things first, I want to put, now this is a jug of boiled water. So I've done all this preparation beforehand. All this equipment has been sterilized. How I sterilize my bottles, big bottles, is I rinse them out with city water, then I rinse them out with boiled water, and I put them in an oven at 220 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 20 minutes. That dries the bottle out, and it will kill any of the bad bacteria that might be in there. So I'm going to put some of this water in here. I'm not going to fill it up, I'm just putting some water in. Alright, that should be enough for the time being. Now this is an imperial gallon, which is 4.5 liters. So the reason I'm doing that is when you rack off out of this bigger bottle into this smaller bottle, you're going to lose some of the liquid in here because of the fruit and the sediment at the bottom. So having the bigger bottle, you can have a bit bigger of a batch so that you can get it into the smaller bottles, the American bottles, and still have, like this amount of headspace. So now I'm going to put honey in here. This is going to take a while. Honey is still thick even though it's warm. So I'll bring you back once all this honey is into the bottle. Alright, so the honey is draining through mostly. I'm going to take a little bit more water and flush some of that down through the funnel. Take the funnel out. Just stick it in there. And I should have my gloves on for the rest of this. So what I'm going to do now is I've got, this is a bung plug for the airlock, one of these airlocks. It's just an extra plug. I'm going to put that in the top of the bottle, put my thumb over the hole, and I'm just going to shake this. And every once in a while you can just let the pressure out of the bottle by lifting your thumb. Now they say you're supposed to shake this until your arms fall off. And then when you think you're done shaking it, shake it some more. And this does two things. One, it mixes up the honey with water really well. Two, it aerates the liquid that's in there, which will help the yeast get started a lot quicker. Alright, that's about how much I usually do. So I can take that plug out. Now, I'm going to put the grapes in here now, just by dropping them in. Because I don't know how much space the grapes are going to take up. So if I fill this up with water now, I may not have any room left to put the grapes in. So I've got to put the grapes in first. And this is going to take a while, so I'll bring you back when I've done that. Alright, all the fruit's in the pool. So now, put the funnel back in there. I'm going to add some more water to it. Now this is just boiled city water. I boil it to get the chlorine out of it. You don't want chlorine in your brew because it will kill the yeast. So I think right about where it's halfway up the round, maybe just a hair more. Should be good. And then we're going to shake this again. And those grapes are going to act like a ball bearing in a paint spray can. Help mix that honey in really well with all that water. Okay, last but not least, now there's two things here. I don't proof my yeast, and proofing yeast is putting it in some warm water and letting it foam up. And that just tells you that it's alive and active. If you do that, you should put it in here first, because the water that you use may change the specific gravity of your what they call a must, or your initial brew. Because I'm putting it in dry, I don't think it's much of a problem. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my turkey baster and my hydrometer, put that in there. Okay, now I'm going to get a, wow, alright. So I don't know if the camera's going to be able to pick that up, but the specific gravity is 1.104. That's pretty high. Alright. And I'm just going to take this. Because this has all been cleaned in star sand, it's not going to hurt it to put it back in. Waste not, want not. 1.104. That's the highest I've ever started with. And now, oh, gotta get the. Now this is all I'm using is traditional active dry yeast. And I've got about half a packet left here from previous brews. So I'm just going to use the whole thing if I can get it open. I think there's probably a little more than a teaspoon in there. So there's about that much. So I'm just going to gently pour that in there. Use it all. Okay, I'm going to put my airlock on top. Push that down. And I'm just going to mix in that yeast. And now we let it sit and see what happens. Now, previous experience has shown that it will start bubbling within half an hour to an hour. So when I see this start pushing air bubbles out, I'll know that the yeast is okay. So I'm just going to make sure that's in tight, and I'll bring you back when I see that happening. So it's been about an hour, maybe a little over an hour, and we got some fine white foam here on the top, and I'm getting a few bubbles starting to come up out of the airlock, and you can see right around the bottom of that grape right there. Oh yeah, you can see the foam coming up through there now. Look at the bubbles coming up out of that. So the yeast is kicked off, and it's underway. So I'm going to put it in the back corner and just leave it until I think it's ready. It's probably 3 or 4 weeks before it gets done. And for about first 3 or 4 days, if I remember, I'm just going to pick the jug up, and I'm going to give it a swirl just to help mix up look at the foam. Just to help mix it up a little bit, just do a little swirl like that, and then just set it back down and leave it. And after about 4 days of doing that, I just leave it sit and do nothing to it until it's done fermenting. So that's it for how I've put my meads together. The other meads are basically the same thing, except it's just different fruit. And the other meads, like I said, I've used 3 pounds of honey in this one and 2.5 pounds in that. So this should turn out to be a little bit sweeter. Now, the reason being is that I don't think I explained that very well is I'm using the bread yeast, or the active dry yeast, and its alcohol tolerance is about 10 to 12% alcohol. And what that means is the alcohol, once it reaches about 10%, between 10 and 12%, the yeast will stop working. It'll basically go to sleep, and it won't chew on the sugar anymore. So even if there's leftover sugar in here, it'll just make the brew sweeter. And that's how these got to be a little drier, is because I only used 2.5 pounds of honey, and the yeast managed to eat all the sugar that was in the honey, and therefore it makes the finished product a little drier. So hopefully this will turn out a little sweeter, but we'll see when it's done. So hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you again on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.